When editing speech for a voiceover, a monologue, lead vocals, whatever, it's customary to edit the words so that there are no stuttering, stammering, hesitation, or mistakes in the reading or performing of the material. Many times it's also beneficial in voiceovers to eliminate unnecessary pauses and open spaces between words and sentences. This will increase the pace of the performance and is often done when there is a lot of breathing pauses or when you want to intensify the impact of the delivery, like a fast-talking radio DJ. Overall, the idea is to create a perfect performance. So when you're editing speech or vocals, it's always a good idea to have the script, the text, or the lyrics as a printed guide for making notes about where you place your edits. In this case, I've included those here in the comments section of this track. So first, we're going to listen to the entire performance, and you'll see along the way that I've created markers that indicate the good spots, I think. You can be the judge.
Voiceovers can be easy to edit. Voiceovers can be easy to edit as long as the voiceover talent doesn't screw up. Voiceovers can be easy to edit as long as the voiceover talent doesn't screw up his lines. As long as the voiceover talent doesn't screw up his lines. You also need to be aware of breath sounds. Because making an edit in the middle of a breath will make your voiceover track sound, well, edited and imperfect.
Okay, so there is the raw track. Not the best material to start working with, but that's why we're here, to edit that. So I'm just going to go to town. I'm going to start with the trimmer tool in slip mode, and I'm going to trim off certain parts here. So first, before I start editing anything, I'm going to go over and create a duplicate playlist. And I'm going to call this voiceover edit. Now I've got the raw file on this voiceover playlist and this new playlist for my edit. And a quick note about markers. I drop these markers in simply by hitting this plus button at any point where I thought that the performance was good. So if you hit that, you get this new memory location dialog, and you can select all this information. We actually cover this in a different video in this course. So check out that video if you have questions about markers and memory locations. So let's get to editing. I'm going to trim off this section right up to the beginning of where I thought that the first sentence was good. Now I'm going to play it and find out how much of this section was actually good.
Voiceovers can be easy to edit as long as the voiceover talent doesn't screw up.
Okay. So I'm going to chop it right here all the way up to the next good point. I'm going to hit the delete button to cut that all out. Let's hear this section.
As long as the voiceover talent doesn't screw up his lines.
I'm going to go over to the grabber tool and put this into shuffle and slide this over. Let's see if these two work together.
Voiceovers can be easy to edit as long as the voiceover talent doesn't screw up his lines.
That sounds pretty good. Go back to slip mode and to the trimmer. I'm going to trim this all the way off. And I'm going to stop right here because it looks like there's a little breath. Let's have a listen.
You also need to be aware of breath sounds because making an edit in the middle of a breath.
So it sounds like this is pretty good from here to about this point. So I'm going to choose the selector and go all the way to the next good point here. And it kind of looks like there might be a breath there that I might want to keep. So I'm going to cut this area out and have a listen here.
Because making an edit in the middle of a breath will make your voiceover track sound.
Let's have a listen to this second half. I don't know that this is very good.
Will make your voiceover track sound.
Yep, it gets cut off. So where does this one go?
Will make your voiceover track sound, well, edited and imperfect.
Okay, so I'm trying to place this cursor and drag it over here with about the same distance between the beginning of this phrase and the beginning of this phrase because they're both the same sentence. Now, if I hit delete in shuffle mode, it'll pop that right in there and we can hear what that sounds like all together.
Because making an edit in the middle of a breath will make your voiceover track sound, well, edited and imperfect.
Okay, maybe a little bit too much space between these two regions, but we'll work on that later. So now, I'm going to stay in shuffle mode, and I'm going to choose the grabber and bring all of this together. And let's hear what it sounds like.
Voiceovers can be easy to edit as long as the voiceover talent doesn't screw up his lines. You also need to be aware of breath sounds because making an edit in the middle of a breath will make your voiceover track sound, well, edited and imperfect. Voiceover.
Okay, we're almost there. We've got too much space here between these two lines. It sounds like there's a mistake here in the edit right here because the breath is cut and we've got some extra space at the end here. Let's fix those up real quick. I'm going to go into slip mode with the selector and take this section out. Actually, we'll go to shuffle and now I'm going to hit delete and bring those two together. Let's hear how that sounds.
It doesn't screw up his lines. You also need to be aware of breath sounds.
That sounds pretty good. Let's move on. Let's listen to this area here. It sounds like the breath is cut.
Sounds because making an.
We'll zoom in. Looks like there's two breaths that were cut together.
Sounds because making an.
So let's pick one. And in this case, I'm going to go to the trimmer tool and in slip mode. Pull that out. Oh, we don't want that to happen. So we'll pull this back here and let's hear how this breath works.
Sounds because making an edit.
That sounds much better. Let's hear it one more time.
Breath sounds because making an edit in the middle.
Sounds much more natural. Let's check out this transition.
A breath will make your voiceover track sound, well, edited and imperfect.
All right, we can work with that. Sometimes when you're editing, you might open up a free space between two regions where there's no audio whatsoever. In this case, we don't have any of that, which is a good thing because often you'll want to fill those spaces with what's called room tone. Room tone is the sound of the room where you're recording the voiceover. The tone of the room includes any unintended noise from computer fans, AC units, or other items that affect the noise in the room. I'm going to take a little bit of sound out of here. We'll hear what the sound difference is. So I'll delete this for a second, and let's hear what it sounds like without the room tone between these two regions.
A breath will make your voiceover track.
It might not be that obvious to you right now, but if you actually increase the volume during that section, or if you end up compressing or limiting this when you're doing the mix down, that difference might be very obvious, an unintended effect that you don't want. So keep the room tone in between the regions and you won't have to worry about it. One suggestion for you too is to record about 30 seconds to a minute of room tone and either have it at the end or the beginning of your session so that you always have that to pull from if you need to pull a piece and drop it in between two regions. One last thing that I would recommend doing is putting very short crossfades between each of these regions to smooth out any possible clicks or pops, any differences in sound between any of the regions. So I would go in here, turn on the Smart tool, and add small little crossfades. And I would do that for each one of these edits. Now, one thing I'll mention too is that some clients actually might want the empty space between each of these regions, and it's up to them, but I personally prefer the room tone to carry on the continuity of the sound of the overall voiceover here. So now that we've got a full edit here, let's take a listen to it.
Voiceovers can be easy to edit as long as the voiceover talent doesn't screw up his lines. You also need to be aware of breath sounds because making an edit in the middle of a breath will make your voiceover track sound, well, edited and imperfect.
Okay, the pace of that is not too bad. It's a little bit slow. There are some longer pauses between some of the sentences that we might want, and there are actually breaths in there that we may or may not want. Some people don't like to have the breath sounds on a voiceover track. So we could go in and fine-tune this, edit the breaths out, create smaller spaces between the regions, and create a faster pace for this voiceover if we want to. It's totally up to you or up to the client. So once you're done editing the voiceover material, listen to the whole track through and make sure it flows and that the pace of the reading and the breaths in between all sound natural. Alter it as needed, adding fades and crossfades to avoid any sonic changes between the regions. And with all those techniques put together, you know the process for editing a voiceover track in Pro Tools.